In this video, we're going to use our BA2 Plus to calculate present value and future value with periodic rates and times. When working with these calculations, we need to remember that the t is going to be the number of years times the number of compounding periods in a year. Our r will be the annual percentage rate divided by the number of compounding periods in a year. And so, for example, for semi-annual compounding, we would adjust by a factor of 2, and for monthly by a factor of 12. So to be sure, if we have a semi-annual rate, we need to make an adjustment to the number of time periods per year and the rate charged within each period. So in order to do that, we would simply divide our annual rate by 2 and multiply our number of years by 2. Here you see additional examples of compounding frequency. So for example, if it were quarterly, we would use 4, monthly 12, and daily 365. And here's a visual representation of our compounding frequencies. So our first example is going to look at future value, and we want to know what the value is in 5 years of a lump sum or single payment of $10,000 made today, assuming you can invest it at 7%. And first we're going to assume annual compounding, and then next we're going to assume semi-annual compounding. So we'll see our formula inputs there. So here we see our calculator inputs, and we'll use our time value of money worksheet on our calculator in order to solve this problem. And so the first thing we always want to do is make sure that we clear our time value of money worksheet by hitting second and FV. Then we'll type in our inputs. Our first is going to be our number of time periods, and that's going to be 5 times 1 equals. And then I'll select in. The next will be our interest rate or our yield, and it's important to remember to use the whole number, not our decimal, whenever typing it in. So I'll type in 7 and then hit IY. The next is our present value, and we're going to assume today we make a payment of $10,000, and that's going to be a cash outflow, so that's why we use a negative amount. So I'm going to type in 10,000 and then hit the plus or minus sign. And then I'll hit PV. In this case, we do not have an annuity, so I'll put a 0 in for that. And we're going to solve for our future value, so we're going to compute our future value. So I'll hit CPT and then FV. And here we see a future value of $14,025 and about 52 cents. Again, this example is for our annual compounding, so we didn't have to make an adjustment for our N or our IY. First thing that we want to do whenever we're working with our time value of money worksheet is to make sure that we clear it out, so I'll hit second and FV. And then clear the value that's stored in the calculator. And now we're going to adjust for our semi-annual compounding, so I'm going to hit 5 times 2 equals. Where 5 is the number of years and 2 is the number of compounding periods per year. And I'll make sure that I hit equals after that so that it stores the value of 10 and not the value of 2. And then I'll select in. Our interest rate or our yield is going to be 7% divided by 2. And so we type in 7 divided by 2 equals. And then hit IY. And just like the previous example, our present value is going to be a payment, so it's going to be a negative amount of $10,000. So I'll type in 10,000 and then hit the plus or minus key. And then select PV. Our payment is 0 because there's not an annuity associated with this problem. And we're going to calculate or compute our future value, so I'll hit CPT FV. And here we'll see we have a future value of $14,105 and about 99 cents. In our next example, we're going to look at the future value in 3 years of a lump sum payment of $5,000 made today. And we're going to assume that we can invest it at 8%, and we'll first assume annual compounding. So the first thing I'll do is make sure that I clear the time value of money worksheet, so I'll hit second and FV. And then I'll clear the answer that's stored by hitting clear. And then we'll type in our inputs. So in this case, our N is going to be equal to 3. So I'll hit 3 and then the letter N. Our interest rate is going to be 8%, so I'll hit 8 and then IY. The PV is a negative $5,000. We're making an investment today, so it's coming out of our pocket. So I'll type in $5,000, hit the plus or minus key, and then PV. We do not have an annuity in this example, so our value for PMT is going to be 0. So I'll type in 0 and then hit PMT. And then lastly, we're going to calculate our future value, and so we'll hit CPT FV. And here you'll see we have a future value of $6,298.56. And now we're going to assume the same inputs except for one adjustment, and that's going to be quarterly compounding. So here you'll see the formula inputs. And now we'll move on to the calculator method. Our N, or our number of time periods, is going to be 3 times 4, and then we need to make sure we hit equals before selecting N. Again, it's 3 times 4 because we're going to invest for 3 years with quarterly compounding, and there are 4 quarters in a year. So I'll type in 3 times 4 equals, and then hit the letter N. Our interest rate, or IY, or yield, is going to be 8% per year, but it's going to be quarterly compounding, so we need to divide by 4. So I'll type in 8 divided by 4 equals, and then hit IY. And again, if we do not hit the equal sign, what will happen is the calculator will store the last value you entered. So anytime we're making a calculation like this for a periodic term or rate, we need to make sure that we hit the equal sign. If not, it'll store the wrong number. So I'll hit equals and then IY. Our present value is a negative amount, so we're going to type in 5,000 and then hit the plus or minus key and then PV. Our payment is 0 because there's not an annuity. So I'll type in 0 and then PMT. And we're going to compute our future value, so I'll hit CPT and FV. And we'll see a future value of $6,341 and about 21 cents. Our next example will look at how to calculate the present value. And we want to know the present value of a lump sum payment that's going to be received in 6 years of $5,000 if the rate is going to be 10%. And first we're going to assume annual discounting, and you see our formula and our inputs there. Our N is going to be equal to 6, so I'll type in 6 and then hit the letter N. Our interest rate is going to be 10%, so I'll type in 10 and then IY. We're calculating our payment, so I'll skip over that portion. We do not have an annuity in this problem, so 0 is going to be our PMT. Our future value is going to be the amount that's going to be received in the future, and in this case it's $5,000. Because we are receiving that amount, we're going to leave it as a positive value. So I'll type in 5,000 and then hit FV. And then the last thing that we're going to do is compute our present value. So I'll hit CPT and then PV. And here we see that we have a negative value of $2,822 and about 37 cents. Again, it's a negative because we assumed that our future value was positive, and therefore we were going to receive the future value. Because of that, we are going to have to make a payment or invest our present value today. Now we'll compare that to semi-annual discounting. And here you see our inputs, and this time we're going to adjust by a factor of 2. So we'll multiply our number of years times 2, and we'll divide our R by 2. So I'll clear our time value of money worksheet. Our N is going to be 6 times 2, so we'll type 6 times 2 equals, and then the letter N. Our interest rate or our yield is going to be 10% divided by 2, so we'll type in 10 divided by 2 equals, and then hit IY. I also understand that you could perform those calculations in your head most likely. You probably know that 10 divided by 2 is 5. But in some cases you'll get an interest rate or a yield that you won't be able to calculate, and so this has the advantage of always getting into that habit where you never have to worry about it. The other advantage is that you don't have to worry about rounding. So what will happen is the calculator will store the value with numerous zeros. Now in this case, 10 divided by 2 is 5, and so there's no need for extra decimal points. But if you had an interest rate of say 11% a year and you did monthly compounding, 11 divided by 12 is 0.9166667, and it repeats forever. And so this way you're not going to miss any extra data by not having that calculation stored into your IY. In any case, our IY in this example is going to be 5. We're going to skip over our PV because that's what we're calculating, and our payment is going to be 0 because we do not have an annuity. Our future value is going to be $5,000. It'll be a positive amount because we expect to receive it. It'll be cash that goes into our pocket. So I typed in 5,000 and then hit FV. And now we'll hit CPT and PV in order to calculate our present value. And here we see that we have $2,784 and about 19 cents.